What if the most profound truths couldn't be spoken at all? Imagine a teaching so powerful, it doesn't rely on words, books, or philosophies. A flower held in silence, a single finger raised, a fire poker lifted without explanation. These are not riddles to be solved. They are doors to a deeper seeing. In this first part of our journey, we enter the mysterious world of Zen, where awakening doesn't come through memorizing sacred texts or mastering concepts, but through a shift so simple it's often missed. A moment of presence, a flash of recognition, the stillness beneath the thinking mind. You'll meet masters who answer questions with silence, disciples who smile instead of explain, and seekers who discover that what they long for is already here, hidden in plain sight. Let these stories wash over you like quiet rain. You don't need to analyze or understand. Just listen, feel, and let something wordless stir within you. Because sometimes, the most important answers arrive when the questions disappear. Hakuin, is that so? Letting go of resistance and choosing equanimity in the face of judgment and false accusations. In a quiet village nestled among the cherry blossoms of old Japan, there lived a revered Zen master named Hakuin. His presence was like still water, calm, clear, and unmoved by praise or blame. People traveled from afar to sit near him, hoping his silence might awaken something within. One spring morning, a storm of rumors swept through the village. A young woman, unmarried and from a respected family, discovered she was with child. Pressured by her parents, she named Hakuin as the father. The village erupted in outrage. Her parents marched to Hakuin's small hut, voices raised, hearts burning with shame and fury. "You pretend to be a holy man," they shouted, "but now your true nature is revealed." Hakuin looked at them gently and said only 3 words. "Is that so?" No defense, no anger, no attempt to clear his name. News of the scandal spread. Villagers who once bowed to Hakuin now crossed the road to avoid him. Children no longer played in his garden. Still, each morning, he fetched water, tended vegetables, and meditated beneath the same tree, silent, serene. Months passed. The child was born. One snowy day, the young woman's family arrived at Hakuin's door, placing the baby in his arms. "You caused this," they said. "Now raise the child." Hakuin cradled the baby tenderly and replied, "Is that so?" He wove a cradle from bamboo, begged for milk from neighbors, and raised the child with quiet devotion. When villagers whispered, he said no more than before. A year later, burdened by guilt, the young woman confessed. Hakuin was not the father. Her parents returned, weeping, begging forgiveness, asking for the child back. Hakuin placed the child in their arms and, with the same tranquil gaze, whispered once more, "Is that so?" He had never clung to reputation or resisted disgrace. He simply responded to each moment as it came, like wind through trees, like clouds passing across a silent sky. In that stillness was a teaching deeper than doctrine, equanimity not born of indifference, but of complete surrender to what is. And perhaps, in your own life, the next time judgment comes, or the ground beneath you shifts, you might remember Hakuin's words. Not to retreat or resist, but to gently ask, "Is that so?" The Flower Sermon and Mahakashypa's Smile, a direct transmission of truth beyond words. The birth of Zen. On Vulture Peak, beneath the golden light of dawn, hundreds of monks gathered in silent anticipation. They had heard that today, the Buddha would deliver a teaching unlike any other, a teaching for those ready not just to listen, but to see. As the wind whispered through the trees, the Buddha sat quietly, his presence luminous. Yet he spoke no words. Instead, he simply raised a single white lotus flower, delicate, freshly gathered, its petals still damp with morning dew. The assembly waited. Seconds turned to minutes. No parable, no discourse. Just the flower held aloft in perfect stillness. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Some frowned. Others cast glances at each other. Was this a riddle? A test? Had the teaching not yet begun? Then, a quiet smile broke across the face of one monk. Mahakashyapa. It wasn't the smile of amusement or cleverness. It was the smile of recognition, of direct understanding. In that instant, he saw not a flower, but flowerness, the suchness of reality, beyond concept, beyond name. The Buddha saw the smile and gently nodded. What can be spoken is not the eternal truth, he said at last. The true Dharma I, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the formless form. This transmission does not depend on words or scriptures. I entrust it to Mahakashyapa. And with that, something extraordinary occurred. The birth of Zen. Not a doctrine to memorize, but a direct pointing to the heart of reality. A wisdom that cannot be taught, only seen. Later, when a younger monk asked Mahakashyapa what he understood from the flower, he did not answer with explanation. He simply pointed to the song of a bird. "Do you hear that?" he asked. "Yes," the monk replied. "That is your answer," Mahakashyapa said with a quiet smile. The flower, the smile, the birdsong. No commentary could improve them. No scripture could contain them. Some truths are too alive to be captured in thought. They must be lived, felt, smiled into, like sunlight touching your face or breath returning to your body after stillness. And perhaps in a quiet moment of your own, you too might catch a glimpse and smile. The scholar and the fire poker. Real understanding doesn't come from intellectual analysis, but from direct contact with what is. He arrived at the mountain temple just before dusk, a man of letters, draped in scholarly robes, his attendants carrying scrolls and inkstones. Known for his vast knowledge of Buddhist philosophy, he had come not to meditate, but to debate. The Zen master welcomed him with quiet eyes, offering tea in a modest room warmed by a flickering fire. "I have studied countless sutras," the scholar began, "and written commentaries on the nature of emptiness, dependent origination, and the unborn mind. But Zen's claim to a transmission outside words and scriptures, I find this problematic." The master nodded politely but said nothing. "Can truth exist without language?" the scholar pressed. "If so, why do Zen teachers write so many words?" Still, the master remained silent. He sipped his tea, tended the fire, listened. Hours passed. The scholar quoted Nagarjuna, dissected paradoxes, and circled philosophical arguments like a hawk over prey. But the master neither challenged nor praised. By midnight, the scholar, though exhausted, hurled one final question into the quiet. What is the true nature of mind, beyond all concepts? The Zen master stood. Without a word, he reached beside him, picked up the iron fire poker, held it before the scholar's face, and asked calmly, "Do you see this?" The scholar blinked. Of course I do." With a slight smile, the master tapped him gently on the shoulder and said, "Then that is your answer." A pause. No metaphor, no riddle, just iron, fire, form, and seeing. In that moment, The scholar's shoulders dropped. His eyes softened. Something within him, long clenched by thought, loosened. He had been chasing truth with words, forgetting that truth had never been hiding. The poker wasn't a symbol. It was just this, and his direct perception of it, just this mind. He remained at the temple for several weeks after, not to argue, but to sweep the grounds, sit in silence, and let the fire warm him, not just physically, but inwardly. For sometimes, when the mind grows quiet enough, a simple object held in silence becomes the clearest teaching of all. Master Gutai's one finger. A single gesture holds the entirety of awakening. No explanation required. Whenever anyone asked Master Gutai about the essence of Zen, he never gave a speech or quoted scripture. He simply lifted one finger. No words, no gesture beyond that. To many it seemed strange, even lazy. A single finger raised skyward? That was the teaching? But those who sat with Gutai long enough began to sense something beyond the surface. His gesture wasn't pointing upward, it was pointing inward. Not toward heaven, but toward this moment. Still, one curious young monk could not understand. He watched Gutai carefully, mimicking the gesture in secret, hoping the finger might unlock some hidden truth. One day, while Gutai was away, a visitor came to the temple and asked the young monk, "What is your master's teaching?" With confidence, the boy smiled and raised one finger. When Gutai returned and heard what happened, he called the boy into his quarters. "Show me your understanding," Gutai said softly. The boy raised his finger. Without hesitation, Gutai pulled out a knife and cut the finger off. The boy cried out in pain, but before he could even make sense of what had happened, Gutai shouted, "Stop!" Startled, the boy turned around. Instinctively, he raised his hand. But now, the finger was gone. In that split second, his mind shattered, not in fear, but in clarity. The gesture he had once copied was now alive within him. Not a symbol, not a trick, but the direct experience of suchness, of presence beyond thought. In that moment, the boy awakened. Years later, when he became a great teacher himself, he too used only one finger, not out of tradition, but from direct knowing. The true teaching of Zen isn't in words or rituals, but in the immediacy of each moment. Gutai's finger pointed not to a concept, but to what is, before thinking, before reacting, before naming. That finger still points today, not to somewhere else, but to right here. And if you pause, breathe, and simply see, you might notice it pointing within you too. Jun and his mother. The map is not the territory. Spiritual truth must be lived, not studied. Knowledge without practice is empty. Jun was a celebrated scholar of Buddhism. Fluent in Sanskrit, Chinese, and Japanese, his lectures drew students from across the country. In the grand halls of a Shingon temple, he wove ancient texts into intricate philosophies. He was, as many called him, a walking sutra. One afternoon, between lectures, a messenger arrived with a scroll sealed in wax. Jun broke the seal and immediately recognized the handwriting, his mother's. She had never studied the sutras, never visited a monastery, never quoted a single teaching, yet her words cut deeper than any scholar's critique. "My son," she wrote, "you did not become a follower of the Buddha to turn into a dictionary for others. There is no end to lectures, titles, or honor. I wish you would stop all this and retreat to a small mountain temple. Sit, meditate, and know the truth for yourself." Jun stared at the letter for a long time. The parchment was simple, but something in those words pierced through the veil of his knowledge. In the days that followed, his lectures continued, but his presence changed. He no longer spoke from the teachings. He began to listen through them. Eventually, he gathered his students. "I have received a teaching," he said quietly, "from someone who's never studied scripture, but who sees more clearly than I have for years." He read his mother's letter aloud. Some students looked puzzled, others uneasy. Their master, the great scholar, was being humbled by a woman who could not recite even the Heart Sutra. "I have mistaken the finger for the moon," Jun said. "I spoke of the path, but never walked it." He left the temple, traded scrolls for silence, glory for solitude. In a tiny mountain hermitage, Jun began again, not as a scholar, but as a seeker. He meditated at dawn, worked in the garden by day, and watched the stars in stillness at night. Years later, a young monk asked him, "Do you miss your old life of prestige and knowledge?" Jun smiled and replied, "The map has value, but only if it leads you to the mountain. Now I am finally walking the terrain." The stories in this first part whisper the same truth, that what is most real cannot be grasped through words. A finger raised, a smile shared, a flower held in silence. Each points beyond concept, into direct knowing. Zen does not ask us to believe more. It invites us to see more clearly, not someday, not elsewhere, but here, now, before thought, beneath language, within you. The moon was never in the words, only in the looking.